I really enjoyed having the rentals for the most part, but I ended up having a boiler go out of a triplex, and the cost of replacing the boiler killed the entire year's worth of cash flow. And that kind of made me realize that like it's either dive into this and I need 100 of these to so that when one of those goes out, the rest of them cover it, right? If I had another boiler go out and then a roof have to be replaced or something like that, I mean the cash flow is gone. So that just kind of got my mind thinking is like, okay, I've had these for a while, I've done okay on them, I fixed quite a few of them up, I wonder what they're worth today. And I started penciling out on paper each individual house and like, okay, this is worth 60 grand and that one's worth 70 grand. And I start packing them all together and I'm like, wow, those are, if I sold them all individually, they'd be worth well more than I paid for them and that I owe on them. It was either we go that route or we double down and we keep adding to them. And my wife and I really sat down in front of spreadsheets and notebooks full of notes and figured everything out. And kind of the conclusion we came to is like, if we can sell them for what we want for them, we probably should.
Welcome back to the Land Podcast. This is Jake Hofer, and we have a great episode here with Shane Albert. Shane was on the show previously, and he has since bought a new farm. We talk about that whole entire process. He sold a rental portfolio and really just kind of realigned and bought a new farm, and we talk all about that. Want to say thank you to everyone that made it out to the Onyx event, the September 5th. And we only had a few extra seats, and it was a very enjoyable night. And I appreciate everyone that showed up, and for Hawk, Moultrie, and Onyx for having some free gear for everyone that attended the evening. We'll be doing it again next year. That is it. I just hope you guys really enjoyed this episode, and check out Onyx if you haven't done so already. That's how we keep doing the Land Podcast here. And you can save with Onyx if you're not signed up with code WHTL. For whatever reason that doesn't work, reach out to me and I'll make sure to get it sorted out. So that is it. We will see you. Here we go. Shane, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Jake. How you doing?
Hey, still good, man. It's good to see you. We talk on the phone all the time, but it's good to have like a pseudo face-to-face conversation,
Right.
over the computer here. But man, you're back because you bought a new farm.
Yeah.
And a lot had happened since we last did an episode. And we'll dive kind of bit, we'll catch everyone up to speed, but you've had a lot of things repositioning in the real estate market, and maybe even some realignments on your own goals and what you guys really want, and like recreating your North Star. So I feel like it's will be fun for people that remember the original episode, or they go back and listen to it and just hear how life changes, priorities change to some degree, and you learn more.
Markets change.
Markets change. But before we get into all that, Shane, for folks, who are you?
Yeah. Appreciate it. Yeah, I'm Shane Albert, and I live up in Northwest Illinois, not too far from Jake. So I've used him on a couple of real estate transactions, which is how we've come to know each other. And I'm in sales by trade. I've been in sales for all in all, it's like 8 years now. But have used the sales techniques and strategies and income to invest in land along the way. And I've got a beautiful wife and three beautiful girls that support the land investing, which is always part of it, right? Like you got to have a good background behind you. But yeah, it's pretty simple, but I work a lot, and I try to play as much as I work. But.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so to catch people up to speed too. So you had bought it was 25 acres. Is that right? 20 acres with a house that you remodeled, and then you shot a big deer off it in the process, and then you ended up selling that. And candidly, that was a challenge for everyone that was involved, but we got it done, and I think it all ended up working out well. What's one thing you learned throughout that process? Because I think that everyone has like on their whiteboard or their spreadsheet of like, this is exactly how it's going to go. Yeah, we'll add a little bit of a buffer. What was something that when you look at a different deal or anything, it's like, okay, I have to account for X, Y, Z.
Yeah, well, that one was like you said, it was a very special property in that it was 20 acres. It was like a perfect rectangle with a house kind of in the middle of it. The challenge was for sure the house itself. It was gutted with good bones. So I went in there and I've done remodels before, and I thought this would be pretty straightforward. The big lesson there was that anytime that you have a remodel that's to the extent that that house was, that there was a lot of unknowns, and that's what we ran into. We ran into different costs that we weren't expecting, and we did have a buffer, but we exceeded that buffer pretty quick with a couple of with a couple of projects that went a little farther than we thought. So that was the big one. The land itself was pretty straightforward. I mean, it was your raw old pasture ground. I mean, it was an old farmstead, so it was pretty raw with some overgrown pasture that we had to clean up, put a food plot on it, cut some good trails, and really just see how the deer used it and then hunt it appropriately.
Hmm. Yeah. And you did a really nice job with fixing that house too. I mean, obviously I was there when it was, when you bought it, and then when it was all finished, you did do a really nice job of making that nice. But the challenge, like like there's so many moving parts into a project like that. You have contractors, and then you have surprises, and then all these holding costs, all these different things.
Yeah, that was a huge thing, right? So the when it comes to just the scope of work and contracts in general, it was it was electrical, it was plumbing, it was so you're dealing with different people all throughout different ones, drywall and flooring and trim and everything. And so the what you don't realize is you think, oh, I'm just going to go in, and I know a little bit about all of it, and I think I'm pretty good at the little at surface level of all of it.
Hmm.
But whenever it comes to, hey, we got to do this whole house and we're trying to do it in 9 months, and it's in your mind it goes great, but you really do have to account for the time frame of other people's schedules, other people's budgets, right? Like sometimes their budgets don't align with yours and it doesn't work out. But yeah, that was the house was for sure the more challenging part of it. And then whenever we went and we eventually put it on the market, I mean, remember the challenge there was finding a buyer pool that wants a house on 20 acres,
Hmm.
and seems like in the area we were at that was a little strong for most people.
Yeah, for sure. And that's, houses with acreage have been a little challenging this year. I would say even more challenging than when we got yours sold. It's funny because everyone's like, I just want a house and 10 acres, 20 acres. Everyone says that, but then, I don't necessarily think they always have the realistic budget of, you know, that's what it's gonna cost because it's there's a lot to it. And but anyways, I think we found the right buyers. It turned out solid. And then throughout that process in the background, you were heavily invested in rental properties too.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, so yeah, at the time, actually, I just had to look this up just to make sure I had my timelines right. But at the time, I had 9 rental properties and this investment property that I called it the farmhouse. Is pretty pretty vague, but it was a small portfolio of rentals in that farmhouse that I was using for cash flow on the rentals, and I would pump some of that cash flow into the farmhouse for some of those repairs. And since then, it was about 6 months after we recorded last. It was December when we recorded, and I think in August I ended up selling all my rentals in one fell swoop, kind of by accident.
Mhm.
So kind of what happened there is in into the unknowns of rentals. I really enjoyed having the rentals for the most part, but I ended up having a boiler go out of a triplex, and the cost of replacing the boiler killed the entire year's worth of cash flow.
Wow.
And it happened in one check. And all of a sudden I was like, well, there goes all the work I did for that year. And that kind of made me realize that like it's either dive into this and I need 100 of these to so that when one of those goes out, the rest of them cover it, right? And not that the other properties didn't cover that particular cost, because they definitely helped. But if I had another boiler go out and then a a roof have to be replaced or something like that, I mean the cash flow is gone. So that just kind of got my mind thinking, is like, okay, I've had these for a while. I've done okay on them. I fixed quite a few of them up. I wonder what they're worth today. And I started penciling out on paper each individual house and like, okay, this is worth 60 grand and that one's worth 70 grand. And I start packing them all together, and I'm like, wow, those are, if I sold them all individually, they'd be worth well more than I paid for them and that I owe on them. And that kind of got me thinking like that might be a good thing to do, in a big picture investment strategy. Of course, I still love real estate, but at the time, it was either we go that route or we double down and we keep adding to them. And my wife and I really sat down in front of spreadsheets and notebooks full of notes and paper and pens and figuring everything out. And kind of the conclusion we came to is like, if we can sell them for what we want for them, we probably should. And that was just with what aligned with our goals. And I got pretty lucky actually. Another realtor here in town who's very successful. He actually lives around the block from me. He's a really, really good guy and very successful selling houses in the area. And I was walking the dog one day, and he was out weed eating, and I stopped by, and I'm like, "Oh, hey, hey, how's it going?" Just small talk, and I said, "Oh, by the way, I'm thinking about selling some of my rentals. If you would happen to have any clients that would be interested in some investment properties or some rental properties," I said, "I'm thinking about selling them." And he said, "Why don't you send me the addresses and what you want for them, and I'll see if I got anybody in mind." So I did that, and I think it was like 2 days later, he said, "Hey, I'll take all these."
Dang. I remember when you called me, I was showing a farm in Southern Illinois, and you're like, "Hey, I sold all my rental properties." Like, all of them at once? And he's like, "Yeah." Yeah. I was like, "Dude, that is awesome."
It was a special situation circumstance for sure that made the decision a lot easier. If I had to take, say, a year to dump all of them one by one,
Mhm.
I might have had a different thought process, different perspective. But when he came in, and the situation was perfect because he was in that situation where he's like, I've got a small portfolio as well, and he's trying to go ahead and grow that to 100 and 125 doors, and my portfolio helped him move the needle. Whereas I was kind of the other way around. It was like I either need to do that or I need to downsize, and my goal was actually get into some more commercial, and our goals just lined up perfect. He gave me a very fair price for everything. I think that I did well on him after all said and done. I think he got him for a good price. And it was just I mean, the stars aligned, and I was super grateful for that because it definitely could have worked out a different way that could have changed the course of how the year went. Because the timing was actually pretty perfect because I think it was that was in August, and I think we ended up selling the farm in September, if I recall.
Yeah, sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was like back to back. I was there was a lot of closing table
Yeah.
meetings happening.
Yeah, 100%. Was when you sold all your rental properties, you sold the farm, now it's October, and you're like, "Man, it's deer season. I don't have any, I don't," because your initial motivation was I have a place to hunt. Like, that's pretty much everyone's motivation when you buy a piece of ground, is have your own place to hunt, do your own thing. Was there a moment of sorrow, like, "Man, I sold everything and now what?"
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I went from anytime I wanted, if I could, if on a Saturday morning, yeah, let's go jump in the blind. I take the girls out there, just having the freedom of going whenever I wanted, if the wind was right, or if the temperature dropped or whatever, just being like, yeah, I can reschedule whatever I need to, and I can jump out there. To my other piece of property that I hunt is my uncle owns ground about 4 hours south of me, and I can pretty well go there as my schedule allows. But that's a lot of, you got to plan for those trips. So not having something pretty close by was pretty tough to have a go from anytime I want to go to now I got to plan it out accordingly. That was definitely a struggle right after the closing.
Yeah, so when you had sold that, I mean, I know we had looked for a while to find a new farm. Where you just like, "Man, I need to find something." And I know you had some earmarked, hopefully that something would pan out, and we can talk about that if you want. But the long and short of it was, I know you were looking because we would talk about farms all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. We looked pretty hard right out of the bat just to see if there might be a 1031 exchange option. And I didn't know if I wanted to 1031 exchange. I was probably leaning towards not 1031ing just because I needed a little bit of cash to disperse in certain areas. And I was just like, if it worked out, I would have absolutely done it, but I wasn't going to force the issue. Because at the end of the day, I sold the farm to profit and make money, and we had done that. So what I wanted to do was look around, see if there was a 1031 exchange. If there was one that made sense, I was all for it. Um, there was a piece close to home that I had my eye on that a really good buddy of mine actually had, and he was considering selling. And it was like whenever I was ready to buy it, he wasn't ready to sell it, and when he was ready to sell it, I wasn't ready to buy it. So the stars never aligned there. Go from a story where the stars aligned to the story where the stars never
This did
aligned.
right.
But you know what? Everything worked out for I think everything works out for a reason, and that one didn't work out, but it kept me looking and it kept me motivating. And you're right. I look at the land in my area, every single day, and I'm always I feel like I'm sending you something once a week. It feels like to get your opinion on it, and I joke with you, you're one of the worst salesmen in the world because you got most of them, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's tough because I don't know, that's just how I am because it's like, man, I obviously I don't know every intention, every goal you have other than what you communicate, but it's like patience is sometimes rewarded, and that's where it is truly a fine line of patience and being aggressive and jumping on when you find something. Um, but yeah, well, we'll get to it eventually. But when you sent me the one that you ended up buying, I was like, oh yeah, we need we need to go look at that
Yeah,
ASAP.
yeah,
But throughout the process, you have a family, you have 3 kids. Where did land fall in the priority of, maintaining your household? Because I think a lot of young families, struggle with this because yes, it's an investment. Yes, it's something that you guys will all enjoy. I mean, I see that your kids are out there and, helping with the food plots and the mock scrapes, and those are memories they're going to have forever. But how is that communicated in your household? Because it seems like you guys are very, very much on the same page and on the same team.
yeah. No, it's so important, and I'm so grateful. I can't shout out my wife enough for being on the same page and understanding. And I've relayed to her that we're in the stage of life right now where we're pretty heavy investing. I'm in my mid 30s now, and I'm still at the point where I can afford more risk than I would say if I was in my mid to early 60s. So we're going heavier on investments, just regardless of what it is, and I look at all different things: real estate, stocks, bonds, crypto. Land is what I always come back to as my favorite because I can go walk on it and I can enjoy it. And we're of the mindset right now that whatever the investment is, we look at it A's that make sense and on paper, and then B, what are the secondary advantages to it, right? With real estate, we can have tax advantages. With land, there's tax advantages as well, but there's also the ability for me to go enjoy my favorite hobby spend time with my family. So we're under the gun right, or we're under the mindset right now is we're gonna buy something that makes sense and financially first, and someday we'll get to the point where we can buy a piece of land, even if it doesn't make sense financially, because it's the right piece because we worked our way into that. And that's kind of where we're at with it. Is she's not a hunter. She's not. She's gone with me in the past, but she's very in depth in the home front, and she's taking care of things at home so that I can go work a high demand sales job, and I can be on the road if I need to, and I don't have to worry about anything at home. And that's we have our roles that we both kind of fill, and we're communication is everything. And when it comes to the land part of it, she understands how much joy that brings me and how much I can teach my kids on the land, and I can teach them hard work, responsibility, and finances too, because I do. My oldest is getting to the point where I can kind of explain the basics of, why do we have this piece of land? And we were out there the other day, and like you said, I sent you some pictures, but we were doing we threw in a food plot and moved some cameras around, put up some mock scrapes. And while I was out there, she had made the point. I said, "Isn't it so great to be out here in the middle of nowhere?" And she said, sometimes when I'm driving down the road, I try to look at a spot where it's only nature and there's no buildings, and it's really hard." And I said, you're right, Lucy, it is really hard." And I said, "And that's why Daddy buys these kind of places, because look around." And I said, "There's nothing but trees and birds and grass and squirrels and deer and turkeys." And I said, "It is all nature out here." And that's exactly why we do it. So I'm starting to really use this great investment as a teaching tool for my oldest, and then my middle's right behind her, and I think she'll probably be into it a little bit more than my oldest will. But it's a tool that I've used for more than just investing, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. It's funny that your daughter, had that thought of how, how rare a wild place is, or how the intrinsic value of that as it becomes more unique. Which is sometimes I wish I go back and just have like an unclouded brain of just pure thought like that,
Yeah.
just like not a million things in your brain, just like, huh,
Like,
let's
look
look.
around.
I just look around.
Yeah. It triggered me for sure, man. Like it made me realize, okay, she's having those thoughts. I need to feed those thoughts and let her know that, hey, you can do that. That is out there, and that's why. And it's moments that I get to teach. You remember how Daddy left early before school the other day, and I got home, after dance practice. That was what Dad was out earning a living so that we can have things like this. And yeah, that day was hard because we didn't get to see each other very much, but we get to spend all day here in the fall in the blind and enjoying it. So it's on top of, obviously, I love it. It's my passion. I love uh, bow hunting and deer hunting, and I love investing, and I love all the aspects of that. But being on top of that, the cherry on top is also being able to teach my kids
Yeah.
a lot of life lessons from it.
Yeah, I think that probably carries the the most weight for sure. I had a cousin. They live kind of far away, but I don't know why I remember this, but he brought up that his wife stayed at home, and he's like, the most important job you'll ever have is raising your kids, and if you do a good job, then you're gonna know.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that stuck with me. I was like, dang, that's very impactful when you really think about it.
Yeah, it's our number one job, man. It's whenever we start to have kids, we said, all right, well, the best thing we can do is raise the next generation. When I think I turned out decent for all things considered, and my job is to leave it better than I found it. And it's cliche, but it's as I've become a parent, my kids especially are getting a little bit older, in the fact that they can, I see them go do their things. It's really important for me to make sure that they're doing the right things even whenever I'm not around.
Yeah. How much of a is land a motivation to work hard?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a huge part of it. And it's the home front is my priority, and the beauty of it is that I do have a home front that allows me to do it. But that's a priority. Make sure everybody's there is taken care of and everything, and then after that, my job is make sure I have extra that I can invest in land and other things to give us what we want. I really like there was an analogy I heard one time. It's regarding just like side hustles, investing in general. Would you ever play Monopoly and never buy a hotel, never buy a property? Would you just pass go and take your $200 every time?
Yeah.
'Cause that's kind of what having a job is. And if I just had my job and just take my paycheck and live, make a house payment, make a car payment, send the kids to school, you buy the dance shoes and all that stuff. If that's just it, that's just kind of like playing Monopoly and never actually playing the game. So my job as the provider of the family is to go through, earn extra, and that's exactly the point you just made. Is I've got to work harder to make sure that I can earn that much to take care of everything at home, and then have the extra for, in my preference, the land.
If you want to know where property boundaries are for public or private, you want to develop a great plan for your farm, document perfect access to a blind, to a tree stand, carve out and measure food plots, connect your multi-trail cameras to an app that shows exactly where they're at, and you can look at the feed for that specific camera location, then Onyx is something you need to check out. It is the only mapping software I use when it comes to deer hunting. I've tried other pieces of software, different apps, and I always go back to Onyx because I think it is the most comprehensive, easy to use, and robust mapping software there is when it comes to hunting and land ownership. You want to send a pen to a friend, boom, send it to them right to text, opens it up. Maybe you have notes, maybe you have pictures on that pin, transfers all of it. You want to send a whole entire folder of a plan that you mocked up, you can do that on Onyx. So be sure to check out Onyx. They are a huge supporter of the Land Podcast. They allow us to travel around and talk to some folks that can give you really good insight and good information no matter where you're at in your process of buying land. Let's get back to the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's what's let's talk about is there a farm that sticks out to you that you thought you would really like, and then maybe after more research you were like, no, that's not the one for me. Is there one that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I think we walked that one. I think it was an 80. Had really good. It was 80 or 82 or something like that. Really, really good deer. And we walked it like.
Yeah.
Remember we had to wear orange. It was in the.
It was muzzleloader season, I think.
It was, yeah, and we walked that thing. It had good walnuts on it. But we did some research on it. We found that there was it was an outfitter in the area, and there was the farm itself was pretty solid, decent priced. I think there was
it was a pretty farm
to it. But yeah, whenever we really, and that's where I trusted you from the get-go, but that's where like I put my trust in you to point out those things, because man, it's easy whenever you're walking a farm as a buyer to put the blinders on and just see, oh my gosh, big walnuts, oh my gosh, funnels, oh my gosh, rubs, scrapes. You know, this is like you're envisioning yourself 20 foot up as a bow hunter and putting one, in the pump station in November, and you're going through going, hey, did you see across that field over there? You see that big old ladder stand, and do you see that this is all owned by this outfitter, and you know what that's going to do to potentially your 3-year-old bucks and your herd in general. Those are the kind of things that a valuable, knowledgeable real estate agent that also specializes in land like you do when you're walking land, that's where you earn your keep for sure, because you've done it to me more times than not where I'm going through finding the reasons to buy, and you're going, okay, like there's a cons list too. There always is. And you're good at pointing that out to me. And that was the farm that I remember for sure. Cause that one was a pretty sweet farm, but
yeah, if you just took that farm at face value, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome farm. But then you throw in the outside factors, and that's where, an 80 acre tract sounds big if you haven't got started yet. But then when you're trying to do what you're trying to do, like it's really not all that big. And that's where the neighborhood becomes really important. And that's where, I've said before, like you won't have every answer to every single question for every single property. Like you just won't. But you do want to have as many of those as answered as you can, or at least the deal breakers, right? Like the big questions that need to be answered, at least try to do your best to answer them. And still, even then, sometimes, it's just a continuum. And as doing podcasts, like it's a pet peeve of mine when someone says, well, it depends. But it really does depend on, the continuum of goals and what you want and all these different things. That's where I've got, got to know you well to where it's like, okay, this is kind of what I think Shane is really looking for. And just have an open dialogue too. Like the last thing I'm trying to do is like drop a hammer, but I am trying to be the voice of reason of like, here are the really redeeming qualities. And here are the things that you're probably going to cuss at in 12 months from now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's why I'm grateful to keep you in my corner, because if in that particular farm, as an example, if a guy just calls up his brother-in-law, a real estate agent, who might know a little bit about deer hunting, might be into it, and they just walk it, I mean, they might pull the trigger, and maybe and still, I mean, just because it was
still might have been okay.
Outfitter, it's still they might be a great outfitter that has a high quality limit, standards for their clients, but we didn't know that. And the kind of money that you're going to dump into that, is you're adding a huge amount of risk on top of what you already are risking, right?
Mhm.
And that's where I tell anybody who's looking to buy a piece of land as an investment property that you got to have a good land specialist, land agent that's in your corner pointing out all the different things, because like I said, it is the truth, man. Whenever I find something, I get excited about it, and whenever I'm going to walk it, I'm only looking for the reasons to pull the trigger. And that's where and you are too, right? Like
Yeah.
you go into it with a really good hunting and investing mindset as well, but you're also the guy who's supposed to point out the, like I said, the cons as well. I know the pros already. It was in the listing, right? All the pros are always in the
The
listing.
bullet points are really redeeming.
Yeah, very few cons make it to the listing, but that's where, like I said, that's where you earn your keep for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I remember that farm. It was a nice one for sure. Yeah, those are all, and I'll say this too. I think sometimes the market as a whole is more forgiving to less redeeming qualities than other times. And right now, I feel that I would say the market's not super forgiving. I'm not saying it's terrible by any means, but I think that if you have some black eyes or you have some major blemishes on a farm, um, people have the time to really think about it. Where I think that farm still went under contract, within a couple days after we walked it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
like the next day, I think. Yeah,
yeah, because it was priced right and it was a good listing. Like, they did a great job.
yeah.
So that's just something that I think that a lot of people really need to realize. Like, there is a continuum of forgiveness in the market where people are willing to overlook some things, and then right now I feel like people are really, truly sitting on a spreadsheet with the pros and cons and being very thoughtful.
As a
Uh,
buyer, that's always nice. To
oh, for sure.
think, okay, I could walk this and I can go back and I can have a conversation and I can sleep on it.
Yeah.
There's some value in there and following what your gut says after 24 hours.
Yeah, I remember when I was earlier in my real estate career, there would be transactions where someone would look at it and you don't hear from them for a week or two, and then they call back, and then it's another 2 weeks, and they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna write something up, and like then when it was crazy, it was like, you're back. Are you gonna buy it or not? Because we got to make a decision.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so it's somewhere in between those two right now, in my opinion.
yeah, I agree.
Um, was there anything else from your previous transaction? And I would even lump in the rentals because I still think there's key lessons in that. But was there anything after you had gone through those experiences, you did well on them, um, that you're like, okay, the next thing, these are things I learned previously that I'm going to apply in my next purchase?
Yeah, well, I had in that first property, the standards were pretty low, right? Like it was just needed to make sense on paper, needed to fit within a budget. But I also bought that one kind of strategically. I brought in a family member to help invest, and they made some money alongside with me on that one, and that one helped out a lot. But my next round of goals um, reflected on that experience, and my next round of I knew I was going to invest in another piece of land at some point, and my number one goal was to try and do that on my own
Mhm.
without the help. And I'm super grateful for it. But at the end of the day, whenever you're owning a piece of land, it's not like buying like I buy an apartment complex or storage unit with partners all day long because there's enough meat on the bones there that everybody can eat. When it comes to land, you're buying that so that you can enjoy it and that you can it's nice to be the sole person who can go on it. And not to say that there's not partnerships on with a couple of hunting buddies that can buy a piece of land and it work out, but I'm talking from a business perspective. It's better to own something by yourself when it comes to land, in my opinion. So that was my number one goal going into the second piece. So I learned that from the first one is like it was great. I was super grateful for it, but I still had to make sure that they got paid first, and
Mhm.
and they did, and it worked out very well, and that just kind of gave me the experience of working with a partner on it and making sure that they were paid, and then going onto my next one. My goal was to take it on my own. My other goal was to the house was a huge headache and time suck of like if it was just that 20 acres, that would have been a lot easier to handle. But the
Mhm.
house was a huge deal. So I didn't rule out a house by any means, but it was going to have to be in different condition than the first one. But I mean, essentially, I do what probably all your listeners do is you've got to search a notification search on Zillow and Realtor and all the websites to notify you whenever something pops up over 10, 20, 20, 50 acres, whatever. And that was kind of where I was at. And I didn't rule out anything with the house, but I sure like the ones that didn't have it
Mhm.
uh, for sure. So I think that was like the two main things going into my next piece from my first one was to try and snag something by myself. So that limited me on a price point, right? Like I could have doubled or tripled the size of the farm if I wanted to to work with another, investor partner on it. But my first goal was to do it by myself and to try and avoid something that had a huge project on it as far as structure, whether it be a pole barn or a house or camper or something like that. I just didn't want it to be a huge project. So I learned those lessons for sure.
Yeah, I think a house would be more advantageous if you were someone that lived 2 hours away or 3 hours away from the farm you're buying, and like, okay, yeah, this is going to cost me some money. I have opportunity to either rent it out, do Airbnb, and block out October and November, so I'm the only one that's going to be there, throughout that period.
Yeah.
I can parcel it off and sell the house if things get tight and I don't want it anymore. If it's a tear down, you still have the utilities there. You still have a well. Wells are expensive to dig. Running electricity is expensive. So that's where sometimes I think people look at houses and they're like, oh, yeah, it's a tear down. But it's like, okay, but there is still infrastructure there that would otherwise be very expensive to put in. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
still some value there underground for sure.
yeah. And so I think those are things to certainly consider. There's been other transactions to where, they thought the house would be a tear down. And once they got in there, they're like, yeah, we just did this, and this, and now we stay there and it's a great house. So, I mean, I think the challenge with, I think yours was, it was a 2-story old farmhouse. It wasn't like a ranch style house where, so I think those are just, I just bring those up because I don't want to discourage anyone, but I think your feedback's, absolutely true. And it's like organizing contractors, at least
Yeah.
around here, is tough because
Yeah,
they're busy.
yeah, it is, and like I said, I'd buy another one tomorrow with a house on it. It's just gonna be a different house, and it's partially because I'm in a different stage, right? Like, at that time, I couldn't be that picky. I was looking for my first one, and that house wasn't all bad. It was mostly gutted, but the problem was is that we thought the biggest surprise was we thought the electrical was kosher. We thought it was up to date. We thought it was up to code. And whenever we started tearing into it, it was not, and it was all ripped out and rewired, and that was a big part of it. But all things considered, I mean, I would do it again. I would just do it different. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate enough to sit here in hindsight
Yeah.
with a good idea of what that would have taken. But now going into my next one, like I said, I looked at plenty of them with houses, and the houses don't scare me. Being a real estate investor on that side as well, I look at it with probably a more broader lens. Is that, like you said, okay, if it's in an area where I can Airbnb it to where I can make some money on it, but I can also use it whenever I want to, and like you said, in November, I can go down and stay or wherever. That's always something to look at. Renting it out, just flipping it and parceling off the house and a few acres. That's always an option. So the houses still don't scare me, but I also thought about, man, what if that was just that 20 acres? Whew,
Oh, but so easy.
that'd have been
It's
great.
so easy to set up and enjoy. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was probably my priority next time was to prioritize land that did not have a house on it.
Yeah. No, I think that's you live and learn. And I'm apprehensive to bring this up too, but we had it under contract, and sometimes you get unreasonable people. And I mean we went round and round and round and round, and I don't know why people think bullying in real estate works, because it never does. It
Yeah,
it never does.
yeah,
Like, usually the seller usually gets to a breaking point, like, okay, yeah, just move on.
yeah,
And that's kind of what happened throughout that process. And then the next buyer comes, and we disclose everything that we learned,
yeah,
and they're like, okay, yep.
yeah,
I go, yeah, it seems reasonable. So I
yeah,
think I think that's something for, as a buyer, to keep in mind. Like, it just does not work out in your favor, and then as a seller, there's always going to be another buyer. It might take a month, might take 2 months, might take 3 months, but
Yeah.
there'll always be another buyer.
When we found at the market, we found at the market when we had it listed was not in favor of a house in 20 acres with that price point. I think that was the big takeaway. And in your experience, you've been doing this long enough that I'm sure there's been times where a house in 20 acres like that would sell no problem at the price point we were asking. But we did end up having to parcel out the house in 5 acres and sold 15 separate to the neighboring farmer, which worked out great for him. He wanted the piece. That was an easy transaction. The house in 5 acres was bought by the perfect couple with a young family that wanted to place to put their horses. And man, it worked out perfect for all things considered. But you're right. I think we spent the better part of a year going back and forth with one particular buyer.
Felt like it. It felt
I
like
mean,
it. I don't know if that's how long, but it sure felt like
it
it.
was, I think it was at least 6 months from the start of contact,
Yeah.
but it was, and you're right. It was at times thought to be, okay, these are reasonable
Yeah.
requests and expectations on both sides to wait a minute. Like I can come down, but I'm not giving it away. And
Yeah.
I'm not catering to all these different demands. And yeah, that was another lesson learned. Again, sitting here in hindsight, I should have walked away from them, way sooner, as soon as the demand started getting a little out of hand. But we also thought hey, we still got them in the hand, right?
Mhm.
And we still have a buyer in hand, is what I mean. But it in hindsight, yeah, I should have cut ties with who you think is a bad buyer right off the rip.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I don't know. It's always a challenge when you're trying to move on from a project and you have other things you want to get done and you want to try to make it work. Like you're trying to lead with your best foot forward, and you know, everyone's working hard to do that for the most part.
Right,
And
right.
but I just bring that up as because that was something that stuck out to me. That was um, a challenging transaction, and then it's so ironic when you sell the other part of it, and it's like over a phone call. Okay, you have to email my attorney.
Yep. Yep.
30 days, 45 days, doesn't matter. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. 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 That
uh,
side of it was super easy.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's the reality of real estate. Every transaction is a little bit different, and you're dealing with so many different people and so many different personalities, so many different goals, so many different risk tolerances. And I do not discount that these are the largest transactions for most of these people in their entire life, and it's stressful and they're nervous, and those are all very
Totally
fair
get it.
emotions. Yeah,
Yeah.
all very fair emotions. So let's get into the piece you guys recently purchased. Your wife gets all the credit for this one. I wish I could say I found it, but I didn't.
Yeah, she does. Yeah, everything, like I said, I think everything happens for a reason. And it was super funny. I'd mentioned a buddy of mine who had a piece that close to home that we had an eyeball on, that I'd have really loved to snag. But um, when he was ready to sell, I wasn't, and whenever I was ready to buy, he wasn't ready to sell. And we had recently kind of gone back and forth with him again, and we tried to see what we can do, and it just didn't work out. And so we kind of moved on from that piece. And I think it was the next day after we had decided that we were going to let that one go, that Marissa, my wife Marissa, was just looking through Zillow, and it was probably, I don't know, it was pretty late, because I think I texted you that night, and I was like, well, Jake's definitely in bed. He's not going to answer this one yet, but I want to get it to him now so that he sees it first thing in the morning. But she goes, oh, man, here's a house on, or here, it's not a house. She says, here's 25 acres. It's just like 20 minutes away. I'm like, no, there's not. I'm like, I'm
I
like,
look at everything. Yeah.
I'm like, trust me, there is no 25 acres within a half hour of here that I don't know about. And she's like, oh, it's right here. And I'm like, let me see that thing. So I look at it. I'm like, why don't I know about this? And it had been on the market for, I want to say, 78 days or 80 days or something like that. It had been on the market for a little while and didn't have a whole lot of views. And I said, where did you find this? She's like, I was on like page 6 of Zillow, just flipping through it, just seeing what was out there. And she was more so looking for houses and doing her thing.
It's casually house shopping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I said, this is, oh my gosh, this is close. It's 20 minutes from home. I said it's in a good spot. It's got river frontage. It's on the river. And I said there's not a lot around it. It's surrounded by ag with some fingers and some drainages. And I was like, man, this would be a nice little farm. And the price point was right there. I mean, the price point was, I thought the listing price was a fair price.
Reasonable, yeah.
And I said, if I can get this for even less than that, I said I think it could be a steal. And so I sent it to you. Like I said, I think it was like 10:30 that night, and first thing in the morning, I think you called me. I don't know if you texted me. I think you called me and said, "Hey, this one might be a good one." And you had done some homework on it to find out, all floodplain and any EPA stuff that pops up, really easily. And you didn't have any super red flags. And I think, how did it work out? I was ready to go over there and look at it, and
The
you
guy
were
had some
busy for about a
travel. Yeah,
week.
I think
Yeah,
I think I had some
and
travel.
and I said, no problem. I said, you get me permission to go there. I said, I'll be there, in an afternoon. And I think I did. I went over there within a day or so of talking to you about it. Um, that was one of those where you think that you're good because it's been on the market for a while and there's probably not a lot of traction on it, but there could be any moment somebody just like me, snags it or finds it and is going to snag it. So ran over there, looked at it. I honestly didn't get the warm and fuzzies when I walked it, and it's probably because I walked it in June, where it doesn't look like a
Humid,
hunting
yeah,
farm.
yeah, humid, nasty
Yeah,
bugs.
yeah, and I didn't. There's not a single walnut or white oak on it, right? So there's not a lot of timber value, which we kind of expected based on the historical
Hmm.
imagery of the farm. But all things considered, the proximity, the price point, the size, it just all made some sense. And after I walked it, like I said, as a hunting property, I thought, well, it could be okay. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to be dynamite, but hey, it's a place to go. It's 20 minutes from home. It's going to be better than no hunting property as long as it makes sense financially. And again, we thought it was marketed just a touch, probably under market value, but fairly close to it. And then we chatted back and forth, and we decided, hey, let's just make him an offer and see what happens. So we made the offer, went back and forth, and I had a number in mind that I thought that they were ready to take, and sure enough, they countered right at it.
Hmm.
And after talking with Marissa and I bounce a lot of ideas off my cousin. We're pretty like-minded in our both hunting and investing business strategies, and he was like, "Man, why haven't you offered already?" Like to him, it was like it was a no-brainer.
Hmm.
And so we went ahead and approved their, we agreed to their counter offer, and that was significantly under what we thought was market value. And then you got a chance to look at it. So we were just under contract, and then your schedule freed up, and you came up, and we walked it together, and you were like, "What was the first?" I'll see if Tess remember. What was the first thing you found on the farm as soon as we
We
walked?
found we walked right up a little knoll. And I was like, oh, there's an antler right here.
Found a chewed up shed, which was really cool. And then it was like left and right, like there's an old rub there. There's an old rub there. See this trail here. And so I don't know why, but I don't know if it was just because it was June and we looked at it a little while later, or I was just looking through it with different goggles on. But um, after you and I had looked at it, you had pointed out some things that really made me excited about it as a deer hunting farm.
Hmm.
And 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 unlike you normally do, you couldn't find a long cons list
It was a
to
good
keep
farm.
counting.
Yeah, it was a good farm.
So we ended up getting under contract. We closed about a month ago, and it's been so far so good. It's obviously we bought it late in the season, and so it's not a huge window to do a bunch of food plots and TSI and habitat work and all that stuff. But I did want to at least there was a big opening grass field that I at least wanted to get that thing cleared out and ready for a food plot, ready for a fall plot. So we did that, and I found a local guy that that I know that does some food plot work and some tilling and stuff like that. So I had him come over and mow it and spray it for a good price. So I didn't actually have to haul my equipment over there, and got it. Well, see what the we'll see what the rest of the rain does. If
Yeah.
I got it, I did get a food plot in right before a heavy downpour, so I probably got good germination. But we haven't had rain since. We have a chance on Saturday, so fingers crossed we get a
Oh,
little bit.
send it down here. We
Yeah,
needed to.
yeah, it's been brutal, but I'm staying patient because the Back 40 podcast just recently told me to stay patient and
Yeah, that's right. Well, that's when I outlined all that, I was like, we have to have a food plot one because the guys get real nervous, myself
yeah,
included. And
yeah.
yeah, everyone has a failed food plot at some
But
point. But no,
so
I
the
mean,
next thing to do is just I got to get a blind up on it, and it was hunted pretty heavily before me, and there's a lot of ladder stands out there, and some of which I think are in decent spots, and I might just put new straps on them and make sure that they're huntable, and I'll just see how that works out. But otherwise, I've got a good saddle set up that I'm going to bounce around all over the farm and find out how the deer use it, how they use it in conjunction with the food and the habitat work that I do, and then I'll probably put some permanent hang on stands in those spots that I think they need to be, and go from there. But it's a pretty straightforward farm. It's a perfect square. Got good north access. Like I said, it checked almost all the boxes, other than I wish I got it for the same price and it was twice the size. But
right. Yeah.
Buckland Funding. If you don't know who they are and you're looking to buy a piece of ground, I encourage you to reach out to them. They're chartered in multiple states across the Midwest, and they understand recreational land. I've said it a million times here on the podcast. The most important piece of buying your first piece of ground is finding a partner, finding a bank that understands what you're trying to do, that has competitive rates and understands the world of recreational land, because not all banks are created equal, and Buckland Funding understands our crazy goals of scooping up a piece of ground to enjoy it with family, to hunt it, to use it as an investment. They understand that and work with that every single day. I encourage you to reach out to them. If you're in the process of buying your first or 20th farm, reach out to Buckland Funding at bucklandfunding.com. Back to the conversation.
Well, no, I think, some of the redeeming qualities on that farm is, you always have to think about who is the next person as well. And I mean, it is a very desirable general recreational farm. I mean, you have some great frontage, you have great access, you have a nice paved dead end road, and you have a lot of really redeeming qualities on that farm. And then also some good deer running around on it too. And then there's quite a few low hanging fruit projects that will drastically improve that parcel. There's relatively flat, right? But there's some nice knolls, some nice benches, some nice creek crossings. For the size of that farm, I don't think you could ask for much more in such a small package ready to go with very easy projects to do. It's not like, oh, we need to bring in a dozer and an 8-foot culvert and we have to do this. I mean, all of it is like, you could technically do all of it with hand tools.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. And I've done that before, and I don't think I'll do that again.
But you could.
But you absolutely could. And you're exactly right. The projects that are there they're huge upside, and not a lot of labor. I mean, I'm gonna need a good decent January or February day with a chainsaw to do probably the most impactful TSI work and clear out and get some sunlight to the floor in, I don't know, that's probably maybe a 4-acre stretch there that really needs it. And then it's maybe a skid steer with a forestry head on it to cut trails on one side of it that's pretty overgrown. But aside from that, it's a mower, it's some chainsaw work, and it's some some strategy as far as food plot architecture and stuff like that. But I really like the farm, and I kind of told you this when I found it. It's kind of a mini Don Higgins special, and what makes his home farm so good. And I'm a pretty big follower of his, but his home farm is so good because it's the best habitat in a large area, and that's kind of how this is. It's butted up to the river, so you're cut off there, and it's ag to the north, it's ag to the south, and there's some fingers there where you could get some deer that bed and call home. But this is the largest block in the immediate area. And it's only 25 acres, so it's not huge, but like you had mentioned, the access is really good from the north, and I can even probably make it work from the east
Hmm.
because it's an industrial neighbor, and so
Hmm.
that's a business over there. So I don't have to worry about a lot of foot traffic over there or anything. So I can access over there just the same as if it was a road.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing, but the access makes that place, even though it's only 25 acres, I can still hunt that with the right winds, and I can be within. I think one spot I'm going to hunt is probably 40 yards from the truck, and you'll never see the truck because it's so overgrown, but the deer will never know I'm there. And
Mhm.
the same spot where on the food plot, it might be 120, 130-yard walk to the truck with a straight west wind. Any deer in the food plot would never know you're there. So even though it's 25 acres, I can hunt it strategically to where I'm not putting any pressure on 95% of the farm. And it based on the way that when we walked in and found all those tree stands, that's going to be a huge change for the farm because I think they are the previous hunters, that it wasn't the landowner, but it was his permission hunters and I've heard from the now neighbors that I've talked to that they would hunt four guys every evening on
Crazy.
25 acres in ladder stands. And I mean, it probably killed something, but it's not going to be the way that I'm going to hunt it. So I foresee a pretty drastic upside in the way that deer use it, and the way that I access it's going to help that a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I would rather have the farm you bought than even a 60 or 70. I don't know where that threshold would be in my mind with neighbors on every side. I
Yeah,
mean, that's just the reality of it. Where I think someone says like, yeah, 25 is nice, but man, I'd really like a 60 or I'd really like an 80. Tell you the truth, I would, you know, it would be dependent on the farm, but there's nothing wrong
I, I
with what
have
you got.
I've learned in the last so my first two properties I started small and really small to some people. I mean, I listen to podcasts. Some people are like, oh, it's a small 80, it's a small 90,
Once
it's small.
money,
And I'm like, I'm
man.
like, I'm like, no, I get that's probably small in the Bill Winky scheme of things, but
Yeah.
for what I'm doing, that would be huge. So this is very small, all things considered. And the last farm was 20 acres, and that's one other, kind of a pro on the list was, I got 5 extra acres on this one, and realistically, it's more like 10 because that house took up 5 acres that was
Yeah.
unhuntable.
Yep.
So my hunting property got 10 acres bigger, really,
Mhm.
from my last farm. But what I've learned from these past two small pieces is learning, having them in the right neighborhood, and by the neighborhood, I mean the hunting area, right? Like the deer genetic neighborhood. Having them there is probably more important, and your access and your size and your pressure, your neighboring pressure, and all those things are more important than the size,
Mhm.
in my opinion, because I killed the biggest deer of my life on that 20 acres, uh, and I had several pictures of him. He was regular on it. It wasn't just a happenstance thing. That was the first deer I got a picture of on July 8th,
Yeah,
and
he
I
called
killed
he
him.
called that little pocket home for sure.
He did, and I treated the farm to where he could, right?
Mhm.
I did all my work up by the house, and I was loud enough to where he knew I was there. But it was again in the neighborhood. That deer moved in and out of my property a lot, and I had trail camera pictures from July. I had about with them in September, late October, and early November. I mean, I had a lot of pictures of them, and it's figuring out how they use it and then how I need to use the farm. And so far on this small piece, I mean, I'm just over a month. I put my first trail camera about a month ago, and it's a 3-year-old factory, which is great for the future. But there's also a 150-inch 8 pointer out there that's ready to be, I'm
Yeah.
the shooter, and that comes from and it's very regular deer movement on it. And again, I think it's a small piece, but I've learned that I don't overlook whenever I got my settings on Zillow to anything over 10 acres, because the right 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres is can be very effective. And yeah, I don't get to stretch my legs on it as much as I'd like to, right? I'm not going to be able to run all over this 25 acres as if it was if it was 250, but it's the same concept, just on a smaller scale.
And a
So,
lot more affordable, a lot less, household
oh,
stress, a lot less financial. I mean, those are all very realistic
yeah,
attributes to that type of thing. You still get to scratch the itch, still got a good farm.
yeah,
It's not,
close to home.
yeah, it's not super expensive. And the one thing too, like with it being, you know, along a floodplain, there's a lot of people that are like, well, you can't grow anything that's good. And like my two favorite trees for deer are swamp oak and pin oak. And
Yeah,
those are gonna do awesome in there. And then I mean,
yeah,
there's a lot of different varieties of quality habitat and species that you can definitely plant. And that, I mean, that's what I would plant even if it was out of a floodplain.
yeah,
And so I think that's something that some people pull back on because it's like you are definitely limited to to less types of trees or shrubs that you can plant, but you can still plant some phenomenal species, in my opinion.
yeah. Yeah, and it's in a spot that it's gonna flood, I'm sure, at some point in time, but it's not flooding every single year by any means, right? It's not a slough. It's not a it's just it's actually across the river is a subdivision. I mean, it's a bunch of beautiful houses with boat launches into the river, and it's the same, it's the same kind of risk that they're running. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's I'm pretty happy with it.
No, I'm super excited for you, honestly, and that's I think for folks that there's a like I said from earlier, like there is a balance of being patient and aggressive. Um, but when you find it, like you don't want to hem haw, and you just got to make a good strong decision and try to get it for the best price possible, which is what we did.
Yeah, and back to the point you just made on the pricing is goes back to one of my goals for the next farm. Because of the price point we got it at, I could afford it all on my own. So this is, I mean, the last farm was great because it was my first one, got my foot in the door, but I was able to achieve the goal because of the first one. I was able to achieve the second goal of buying this one all on my own. And I've got a financial strategy in place and a deer hunting strategy in place, and those two, fortunately, for what we like to do, align really, really well on this farm.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. I'm really happy for you. And I think it's going to be a really cool farm. And um, I would, like I said before, I think something for anyone, try to get a forestry plan in place as soon as possible is like one of the first things you should try to do on a piece with timber, because it kind of unlocks all the other opportunities down the road. And it's good to get a good baseline too, and get someone that is, a true expert that's going to give you the list of species that will do well, and, identify what's on there, which, ultimately is a lot of softwoods right now, but we want to try to get some different strong species in there. And time, how fast time goes. Like the trees I planted here, like they're taller than me now. And like, holy cow,
Well,
it's crazy.
well, and that's the point I was going to make whenever mentioned it is in a floodplain because it is on a river, but it I think they said last year was pretty easy on us, and I own another investment property on a river, so I know I'm very familiar with with the river and the level and how it floods and everything. And we only had one big flood on that last year, and so the neighbors that I met, that whenever I was first looking at the place, it doesn't flood every year. It might not flood for 5 years. So to your point, you go in and get those trees established, and they've got 3 years where it doesn't flood. You can be in really good shape because they're good and established if it ever does, and then they're pretty, moisture tolerant. But yeah, if you can get some things established, it's not low ground by any means. It's just butts up to the river, and that's kind of the window that I have is like, okay, I know that we're sitting here praying for rain and we want some moisture around for our food plots, but I can also take advantage of the dry Septembers and Octobers that we've had to try and get something established, and if it doesn't flood in the spring, then it's even better off. But you're right. It's unlock. I mean, it's unlocking the potential of this place is all over the. I mean, there's so much that can be done that's really not that tough to do.
Yeah. What's what's something you would tell like the 22, 20, 21 year old version of yourself with what you know now? I know you started working in a factory. You realized, hey, I don't want to do this my whole life. What's one thing that you would tell your younger self with what the experience you have now? And I'm directing this more towards land specifically.
Yeah. Same thing I tell myself today. You got to get in.
100%.
Yeah, it's clarity, and it's focus on your goal and your attention. So back then, man, again, I go back to one of my biggest motivators is watching my uncle grow a huge land portfolio. He's got a lot of acreage, and he did very well for himself, and he invested heavily in land. But his passion is the same as mine, is big deer hunter, and that's why he was buying it. And he was buying it back whenever it was much more affordable than it is now. But he thought the same thing we do today. Oh, I'll never pay $1,500 an acre for that. That's junk ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that same ground today is worth $6,500, $7,500 an acre. And thinking about it back whenever I was growing up and watching him do what he did, and he was fortunate. I mean, I was so fortunate that he blessed me the access to his farm, and I get to hunt with family members down there, and that's so fun. But I was able to watch him grow his portfolio into what it was, and I just thought my thought is, well, I'm going to do what Uncle Steve did, and it was just a blanket statement. I never asked myself, how am I going to get there?
Right.
So I go through, and I'm going to work, and I'm working all day. I'm like, yeah, someday I'm going to buy land. Someday I'm going to get, grow up and buy some land. And I wasn't putting anything away. Say, hey, this is my land jar. Even if it was a jar with your change in it, right? Like I never
Yeah.
even started any of that. And I just thought like it's gonna happen someday. And that's just the nature of, I think, our youth is being a little bit broader focused. And if I could go back and kind of do it again, I would really want to narrow in. Okay, you want to buy a piece of land? What's realistic, and what are we going to get there, or what are we going to do to get there?
Mhm.
I think more specifically than that is what I've learned now, and what I go back and tell myself is that you really, in order to get the things that you really want in life, the way that, and I'm talking to me specifically, in order to get the things you want in life, you're gonna have to own some things. You're gonna have to own businesses, investments. And I have a sales job, but I own that territory. I treat that as my small business, and I work for a company, but my mindset is treat that territory like it's my own small business. When you have those kind of things, then you kind of control your income, and you control the amount of money that you can put towards those investments. And I didn't realize that back then, and I wish I would have sooner. I thought that everybody just works hard, and they earn their money, and they pay for everything, and then there's always something extra. There's not anything extra unless you make it. You've got to make your extra, whether it's through your W-2, and you put your extra away, or you you have investments, you have businesses, you have side hustles, those kind of things. I wish I'd have realized that sooner, and I would have started some of those practices sooner. The extra investing, the rentals, the investing in, and I'm not super heavy in it, but a little bit of crypto I think would have gone a long way back in the day.
Right.
Um, but it's that mindset that I have now that I definitely didn't have back then, and I can't beat myself up too much. You don't know what you don't know, but if there's a 22-year-old out there listening to it, that's kind of, if I could talk to myself at 22, that's exactly what I would want to hear.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. Whether it's literally a jar, whether it's an auto debit out of your checking account after you get paid into a separate account where you don't see it. I mean,
That's what I. That's how I started. That's what I had to do.
Yeah,
It's $100 a month, just straight into a different account, and I don't even. It goes straight into an investment, and I don't even see it. I
Yeah.
don't even know what it's worth today.
well, that's probably the way it's supposed to be when you start clouding judgment with emotion. And
Yeah.
but no, man, I'm so happy for you. And every now and then I look back, and I'm so blessed from the podcast, from my profession, the friends and everything that I've made throughout this show, and what my endeavors. Like I definitely don't take it lightly, because like, yeah, I consider you a friend, and we probably wouldn't have crossed paths. Well, wasn't for this and real estate. So I'm just really thankful for for this show and the support and your support and everything across the board. Because man, it's been so rewarding to help people achieve these goals, like and literally dreams. Like, not to sound cheesy, but it's a dream.
It is.
And to be a part of that is really special. So if someone wants to, maybe they're in manufacturing and they need to give you a call for some equipment, if you're welcome to share that if you'd like. You never know who's listening.
Yeah. So anybody so currently I work for a pump manufacturer, or a pump distributor. Actually, we sell a bunch of different manufacturers products, but yeah, S Albert at IPE-pumps. If you work in a factory and you need any fluid handling products. Otherwise, if it's real estate, business, side hustles, anything like that, salbertproperties@gmail.com is a really good way to get a hold of me. And you can find me on Instagram. I don't know what it is. You can search Shane Albert and see if Jake Hofer follows me.
That'd be you.
But, yeah, man, I'd open up. I'd open up conversations with anybody who wanted to chat about land. And I met some friends after the last podcast we did, that reached out because they had similar aspirations, and still chat with a couple of them. So I'm looking to grow my network to anybody who's like-minded and that I could maybe help out, or maybe just wants a sounding board and I can help them out, or maybe I need some help.
Right. That's right. It's that I truly believe the land podcast community. I mean, it is phenomenal. There's a lot of people that are willing to help other people, that recognize, like, hey, this is a young guy that has aspirations and is motivated, and there's people that are willing to help folks. And then you can learn something from everyone. And maybe there's someone that's hey, what did you really focus on for for a smaller parcel? That's all I can afford right now, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I think that's yeah. So I encourage everyone to reach out. And then that is it, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I got to end on the big thank you to you. I mean, like you said, it was over 3 years ago now. I think I listened to the podcast. You had done an episode basically on, it was something along, the message was, I remember the message. I couldn't tell you what episode, but the message was, you think you can't afford it, but you probably are closer than you think. And that got me thinking that, you know what, I actually might be closer to actually buying a smaller piece than I think. And I said, I'm just going to reach out. So I think I reached out on Instagram, and I think you'd have to check and see if this was your record, but I think we were making an offer 2 weeks later. and that was the first farm, and that worked out. And I have used you as a sounding board for land, for business, for different investing strategies, for tons of hunting strategies and trail camera pictures bouncing back and forth. And I appreciate our friendship too, that, like you said, would have never come to fruition if you didn't put out the land podcast for me to find. And it's, yeah, I value our friendship as well as any other. And I'm grateful for you as a real estate agent to be my partner there, to make sure that, looking through things with the right lens and having my best interest in mind there, because that's huge to me. And then in that 3 years, I mean, you've watched my land progression and you watched me grow, but dude, I've watched you grow 10 times more than that. I mean, from Exodus and what you guys were able to achieve there and get that platform started. And now you're doing stuff with Meat Eater, and now you've got the whole whitetail platform that's been taken off like a rocket. So kudos to you, man, for doing what you've been doing. And you provide so much value for absolutely nothing to guys like me that have been able to achieve goals and dreams. And I think I'm probably just one of them, but you've got a whole spreadsheet now of over 100 people that you've helped buy land. And that's no small feat. And like I said, you do it for nothing. It didn't cost me a dime to listen to your podcast every day. So I'm extremely grateful as well.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate that. And selfishly, I've learned a lot along the way too. So awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.
There you guys have it. Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, it would mean a lot if you left a 5-star review and maybe shared it with a friend. We are about to get into the very busy time of year, and I'm trying to batch a lot of these ahead of time. So if you've been someone that has had a lot of enjoyment of listening to the land podcast, maybe it helped you in your land journey and you want to share your story, I'd love to hear it. And I feel like some of these conversations are the best because they're extremely relatable. And that's why we started the land podcast. We've already surpassed the 100 land buyer goal. But the magic's still here. And if you feel like your story isn't all that unique, I still encourage you to reach out, and I would love to have you on the land podcast. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you to Onyx, Painted Arrow, Hawk Optics, and Buckland Funding and ASM Labs for supporting the show. We will see you next week.